Creating the code for the users is pretty straightforward actually, because as for the places, we again need a schema, so what we built right here in our place.js file, where we predefine the structure of a document, so of the data a new user sign-up has to contain. Then we will export this schema and use it here in our users controllers. So that's actually what we want to do right here. So with that, let's get started with the schema first. And to do this, we again go to our models folder, now create a new file, this time a user.js file, and now we can again follow the logic we learned before. We first have to import Mongoose here, so we require Mongoose. And what else do we have to import? Well, we need our schema constant here with mongoose.schema to be able to create the schema. As I said, now we want to create the user schema, therefore naming our constant user schema makes sense, I guess. We again will instantiate a new JavaScript object here, and this object now contains all the properties our new user needs. So what properties are these? Well, the first property obviously is the user name. As for the places before, we will again use an object here, and the name should be of type string. And it should also be required. So required should be set to true. We can actually copy this because our second property, the email, will kind of have the same information, but I want to add one additional property here. Because our email will be an information which we query a lot. For example, when we do the user login, well, we need to query the user email in our database. Now, although the database in this project, in this course, will not be very big, if you have a really big database, which is typically the case if you store user data, then you want to make sure that your email is queried as fast as possible. And for that, you can simply add unique right here. If you set unique to true, this will just create an index for the email, which in simple words simply speeds up the querying process if you request the email. Therefore, we add this property at this point. Another property we need is our password, of course, for the user. So the user has to add a password. The password should also be a string here, and it should be required. And we could add one additional property, the min length property. This simply validates the minimum length, so the minimum amount of characters our password should have. In our case, we'll stick to 6 characters here. That's optional though, but I guess it makes sense here to at least make sure the user adds a minimum length for the password he uses. The next property is our image. We had this before in our places. This is again a string and required is set to true. Again, we are talking about the URL here, so that's basically the same logic we had before for the places. We don't store any files in our database. The last property we have to add for our user schema is the places property here. Places plural because one user can have multiple places, but one place can only be allocated to one single user. You remember what we talked about in the last lecture. And places will be dynamic later, so we will store the IDs of the places allocated to a user right here. For the moment, I'll just use a string and set required to true. This means we will add the place manually, but that's just step 1. Later in this module, when we add the relation between places and users, this will of course be a more dynamic approach where we collect the ID from the corresponding place a user created. With that, we are almost done with our schema and we could already create and export our model, but there is one thing missing here. Because unique up here, as I said, only creates an internal index in the database to make it easier and faster to query our emails. What is missing though at the moment is an internal validation whether the email that we want to create right here exists already. This is not done by unique. For that, we have to use a third-party package, the Mongoose Unique Validator. And to use it, we first have to install it with npm install --save Mongoose Unique Validator. With that, it's installed, and now we can use it by creating a new constant, name unique validator, and now we require the Mongoose unique validator right here. With that, we can use this third-party package to make sure we have a unique email here. And to add it to our schema, we simply add it to the schema via the plugin method here. So we add unique validator, like this. With that, we made sure that we can query our email as fast as possible in our database with unique, and we made sure that we can only create a new user if the email doesn't exist already with our unique validator package here. Now we can create and export our model. We know the syntax already. It's module.exports, and this should be mongoose. Now the model method. And here we have to give our model a name. As I said for the places already, this should be in a singular form and with an upper capital starting character. So in our case, naming the model user makes a lot of sense. As you remember, this will also define the name of our collection. So the collection will be called users without the capital U. And we want to export our user schema here. Let's save this now. And with that, we finished the creation of the schema and the model. Very important though, we still don't have any connection between users and places. I want to repeat that because this will come later. But if we look at both topics separately, we have now the places schema and the user schema. Therefore, let's now use our user model.